There are places in the world where time seems to stop, where every stone, every crack and every silence carries a mystery that defies our understanding. Have you ever imagined that a simple wall, closed for centuries, could hold such a big secret that the sky itself chose to reveal only now? What you are about to hear is not a coincidence. It is not just history, nor a travel curiosity. We are talking about a sealed gate, a prophetic symbol, which according to the scriptures will be the way through which the glory of God will re-enter Jerusalem. And the most impressive thing is that in recent years, subtle signs have begun to emerge, unexpected movements, cracks that did not exist before, echoes that many believe are not natural. Could what is happening in front of that gate be just the work of time, or are we about to witness the fulfillment of a promise that has crossed generations? Stay with me until the end of this video, because if what is happening there is really a sign, then we are facing one of the most anticipated chapters in the history of the Christian faith. The city of Jerusalem is the setting for countless stories. Its stones have witnessed kings, prophets, armies, and pilgrims from all over the world. For centuries, it has been a center of faith and conflict, hope and despair, encounter and separation. Among the many places that carry deep meanings there, one in particular seems to defy time itself, a place that remains still, but that awakens concerns in those who allow themselves to look more closely. Have you ever wondered why a city gate that was once a passageway for kings and priests has been sealed for almost half a millennium? What could have led a power like the Ottoman Empire to decide to seal, with stones and mortar, a gate that gives direct access to the most sacred part of Jerusalem? The answer to this question is as old as the walls that surround the city itself. It involves legends, military strategies, religious interpretations, and a constant echo of prophecies that span generations. The Eastern Gate, also known as the Golden Gate or the Gate of Mercy, stands motionless on the eastern face of the old city walls. For many, it is just a tourist attraction, a detail among many in the mosaic of ancient buildings. But for others, this gate carries the weight of a fate foretold centuries ago. Its closure, far from being a simple architectural decision, is surrounded by layers of meaning that go beyond logic and reason. There are those who believe that it holds a decisive role in the future of humanity. It is impossible to walk through the streets of Jerusalem and not feel the overlapping of eras. Every stone seems to have a story to tell, and every silence between the narrow alleys sounds like an invitation to listen to what the centuries have left behind. But as we approach the eastern side of the city, something changes. Even amid the hubbub of tourists, vendors, and pilgrims, there is a strange stillness in that sealed wall. A calm that does not match the rest of the city, a kind of forced pause in time. During the Ottoman Empire in the 16th century, Sultan Suleiman, known as the Magnificent, ordered the reconstruction of the walls of Jerusalem. While the city gates were given new forms and access points, the eastern entrance was permanently closed. Official records from the time are scarce. There are no documents that detail the exact reasons behind the decision. However, oral tradition and accounts that have passed down through the generations point to a reason that goes far beyond engineering or military defense. There, right in front of the gate, is a Muslim cemetery. Its location is not seen as a simple coincidence either. There is a Jewish tradition that states that the Messiah, upon his return, will come from the eastern side and pass through those gates to enter Jerusalem. For many scholars and religious people of the time, the presence of a cemetery there was a spiritual barrier, an attempt to prevent the Messiah, considered pure and a priest, from passing through an area that was impure according to Jewish law. Whether this was simply a strategy of religious domination or a political action remains an open question to this day. What is known is that since then, the Eastern Gate has remained closed, as if the entire city were awaiting an event that has not yet occurred. This silent waiting, marked by centuries of observation, has fueled not only the curiosity of tourists, but also the fervor of theologians, archaeologists, scripture scholars, and even scientists interested in understanding the interplay between faith, history, and geography. Over the years, several events have transformed the meaning of that gate into something even more loaded with symbolism. The same place that was once a passage for processions and moments of religious celebration has become a landmark of messianic expectation, a constant reference in sermons, books, and academic debates. The Golden Gates have ceased to be just a physical structure and have become a universal symbol of hope, fear, and faith. Some people claim that subtle signs have been appearing around the gate. Small movements in the stones, dust falling during calm moments, reports of almost imperceptible vibrations. Facts like these, recorded by visitors and local residents, divide opinions. For some, they are simply the natural effects of time and erosion. For others, they represent signs that something is about to happen. It is in this convergence between the historical, the spiritual, and the physical that the Eastern Gate stands. A fixed point that concentrates within itself centuries of intertwined narratives. Each stone, each fissure, and each story contributes to the mystery that surrounds that place. And even for the most skeptical, it is difficult to deny that there is something there that goes beyond simple architecture. The silence of the gate is not empty. It carries the sound of ancient promises and future expectations. A silent invitation for those who wish to understand not only the history of a city, but also the deeper plot between the human and the divine. When contemplating the Eastern Gate, it is impossible not to go back in time and try to understand what motivated its permanent sealing. The decision to close one of the most emblematic entrances to Jerusalem occurred during a period of great political and religious transformations. To understand the context of this decision, it is necessary to delve into the history of the 16th century, during the rule of the Ottoman Empire. At that time, Jerusalem was under the leadership of one of the most influential and powerful sultans in the Islamic world, Suleiman, who became known as the Magnificent. His reign, which began in the year 1520, marked a period of territorial expansion, political stability, and investment in major infrastructure projects in various regions of the empire. Jerusalem, due to its religious and strategic importance, was not left out of these projects. Around 1535, Suleiman ordered the reconstruction of the walls surrounding the old city of Jerusalem. The decision had clear motivations: to protect the city from possible invasions, to demonstrate the power of the Ottoman Empire, and to reaffirm control over a territory of immense religious and geopolitical value. The existing walls at that time were already in disrepair, the result of centuries of conflict, looting, and neglect. The new construction, completed around 1541, remains to this day one of the city's most recognizable landmarks. During this reconstruction process, one detail caught the eye. While the other gates were restored and continued to serve as entry and exit points to the city, the Eastern Gate was sealed with stone blocks. This specific action was never accompanied by an official justification recorded. There are no documents in the Ottoman archives that explain in detail the practical or military reasons for this decision. Despite the lack of an official account, several theories have emerged over the centuries. One of the most widely accepted among scholars is that the decision to close the gate was directly linked to fear of a possible messianic manifestation. In Jewish tradition, there is a belief that the Messiah, when he comes, will enter Jerusalem through this gate, coming from the direction of the Mount of Olives. By sealing the passage, Suleiman would have, in a symbolic and strategic way, attempted to prevent or hinder the fulfillment of this prophecy. Complementing this measure, a Muslim cemetery was established just in front of the Eastern Gate. According to the interpretation of Jewish law, priests, known as Kohanim, are not allowed to approach areas containing tombs so as not to become ritually impure. Thus, the existence of this cemetery added a spiritual barrier to the physical one, creating a double impediment that, according to the Islamic belief of the time, would reinforce the protection against the messianic entry. In addition to religious issues, it is also important to consider the political context of the time. Suleiman had to deal with a series of internal and external tensions. The 16th century was marked by conflicts with the Safavid Empire in Persia, territorial disputes with the Europeans, and the constant need to assert Ottoman rule over conquered territories. Jerusalem, as a spiritual center for Jews, Christians, and Muslims, had enormous symbolic weight. Any sign of instability or a messianic movement could trigger local unrest and even larger confrontations. The decision to seal the gate, therefore, can be seen as an attempt to control not only the physical space of the city, but also the spiritual expectations that surrounded Jerusalem. Controlling the collective imagination was as important as protecting the stone borders. By sealing the Eastern Gate, Suleiman established a visual landmark that to this day generates speculation, debate, and interpretation. Another relevant point is the relationship between architecture and political message. The reconstruction of the walls of Jerusalem was carried out with significant resources and involved local labor from other regions of the empire. The result was an imposing structure with 7 main gates in full operation. By keeping the eastern gate closed, Suleiman created a symbolic contrast that reinforced the sacred and, at the same time, untouchable character of that access. As the centuries passed, the Sultan's decision continued to fuel the narratives surrounding the city. Pilgrims visiting Jerusalem often come across the stone wall and wonder about its origins. For scholars, the lack of documentation only adds to the fascination. Speculations range from military to health-related to spiritual explanations, but the lack of an official answer keeps the mystery alive. To this day, the Golden Gates remain sealed, a silent testament to a decision made at a time of great transformation in the history of the Middle East. What was intended to be a measure of urban control has become, over time, one of the greatest symbols of prophetic and religious expectation. The gate remains there, immobile but charged with meaning, as if the city itself awaits the unfolding of a chapter yet to be written. Over the centuries, the decision to keep the Golden Gates closed not only preserved a physical landmark, but also further strengthened the prophetic interpretations associated with the site. The gate, which already carried symbolic weight, became a direct link to key passages of Scripture that point to the future of Jerusalem and all humanity, according to Judeo-Christian traditions. One of the most frequently cited references when discussing the spiritual importance of the Golden Gates is found in the book of the prophet Ezekiel. In chapter 43, the prophet recounts a vision he had during the exile in Babylon. At that time, the Jewish people were living in a time of desolation, far from their land, and with the Temple of Jerusalem destroyed. In the midst of this painful scenario, Ezekiel describes a powerful image. He sees the glory of God coming from the east and entering the temple through a gate facing east. According to the account, this glory filled the interior with indescribable light and power. The detail of the direction does not go unnoticed. The emphasis on the eastern side reinforces the connection with the Golden Gates, as they are precisely the eastern access to the Old City. The mention of the return of divine glory feeds the belief that this place will one day be the path through which a grand spiritual manifestation will take place again. Another significant passage is in chapter 44 of the same book. There, Ezekiel describes the eastern gate as an access that would remain closed. He states that no one else would pass through it except the prince, who would sit there to make offerings to the Lord. For many interpreters, this prince represents the Messiah, the one who would come with divine authority to restore Israel and establish a new time of justice. In addition to Ezekiel's visions, the book of Zechariah also contains elements that strengthen this expectation. In chapter 14, the prophet presents a dramatic scene full of eschatological significance. He describes a future moment of divine intervention in which the Lord himself will set foot on the Mount of Olives, which is located directly in front of the Golden Gates, separated only by the Kidron Valley. According to the story, the mountain will split in half, creating a large valley, and the city will be transformed. This description has been the subject of countless studies and debates over the years. For many scholars, it points to an event of such magnitude that it will affect not only the physical space of the region, but also the course of human history. The idea that the Creator himself will physically intervene in that specific geography reinforces the centrality of the Golden Gates in eschatological expectations. The New Testament accounts also expand on this connection. In the book of Acts of the Apostles, chapter 1, there is a record of a moment that left a deep impression on Jesus' followers. After his resurrection, he took his disciples to the Mount of Olives. There, before them, he ascended into heaven. The disciples, astonished, remained looking upward until 2 men dressed in white appeared and announced that Jesus would return in the same way as he had been seen ascending. This promise of return, given at that very spot, became one of the pillars of Christian hope regarding the second coming of Christ. This sequence of events creates a line that connects past, present, and future in an uninterrupted manner. From the Babylonian exile, through the days of the prophets, to the ministry of Jesus and on to future expectations, the eastern axis of Jerusalem remains a recurring scene in the manifestations of the divine presence. Many scholars point out that this geographical repetition in biblical narratives is not a mere coincidence. There is a theological intention behind the choice of the East as the place where God's glory enters. In many cultures and religious traditions, the East symbolizes birth, the beginning of a new cycle, and the arrival of light. In biblical tradition, it also carries this meaning of renewal and manifestation of divine will. In addition to spiritual interpretations, archaeologists and researchers also recognize that Jerusalem's east-west orientation has always played an important role in its architecture and urban organization. The city's main roads and structures were, in different historical periods, aligned based on specific cardinal points, further reinforcing the symbolic value of that region. It is important to note that not all theological schools share the same interpretation of prophetic texts. There are significant differences between Jewish and Christian interpretations, and even between the different branches within these two traditions. While the Messiah is still expected for Jews, Christians believe that Jesus has already fulfilled part of these prophecies and will return to complete the rest. This diversity of understandings, far from weakening the theme, makes it even more fascinating, as it shows how the same place can be seen from such different angles, but equally loaded with meaning. With this, the Golden Gates remain steadfast as a symbol that transcends religious and cultural boundaries. The stones that today block the passage seem to carry within themselves the weight of these ancient promises. And so, Jerusalem continues to be watched by attentive eyes, by people who wait, study, and try to decipher what the future holds for that piece of wall that has remained immobile for so long, but never indifferent. The weight of prophecy and the symbolic power of the Golden Gates are not confined to ancient texts or theological discussions. In recent years, reports from Jerusalem have attracted the attention of curious people, scholars, and local residents. Small events have been observed in the vicinity of the closed gate, further sparking interest in what is actually happening in this structure so steeped in history. One of the most talked about situations involves the appearance of visible cracks in some areas of the wall supporting the gates. Civil engineers, archaeologists, and conservation experts have been following with some concern the changes in the structure of the eastern wall. Some of these cracks were detected during routine inspections carried out by agencies responsible for preserving Jerusalem's historical heritage. Although these changes can be attributed to natural causes, such as the wear and tear of time, temperature variations, and small seismic movements that occur in the region, many people see this as something more than just the action of nature. In addition to the cracks, reports of small pieces of stone and dust falling have been increasing. Tour guides who often take visitors around the Golden Gates say that on days with stable weather, without wind or rain, it is possible to notice the release of dust particles that run from the cracks between the stone blocks. The curious detail is that these episodes do not follow a predictable pattern. They happen at random times with no immediate explanation. Longtime residents of the area claim that these small dust slides were not common a few decades ago. They report that these phenomena began to be noticed more frequently in the early 2000s. There is no consensus on the reason for this change. Some attribute it to the increase in traffic of people and vehicles near the site, while others prefer to associate the events with a supposed gradual fulfillment of ancient promises related to the gate. Another aspect that draws attention involves reports of vibrations felt by some visitors. Although there are no scientific records that officially confirm such occurrences, there are testimonies from people who, when standing in silence in front of the gate, said they felt a slight pulse coming from the ground. These experiences are usually described as a kind of subtle tremor, almost imperceptible, but real enough to be noticed by those who are there with attention and sensitivity. Engineers working on structural monitoring have already installed sensors in some parts of the eastern wall to measure the stability of the soil and rocks. According to reports released by local technicians, no imminent risk of collapse has been detected, but the documents also acknowledge that the soil in the region has natural instability due to its geological formation. Small shifts can occur over time, especially in buildings as old as those walls. In addition to the physical phenomena, there is also a more subjective side to the reported experiences. Pilgrims and tourists mention a feeling of unusual presence when standing in front of the Golden Gates. Some report that, even amidst the usual hustle and bustle of the city, there is a kind of dense silence in the air around that specific area. Not absolute silence, but a different perception of the environment, as if time slowed down for a moment. Prayer groups from around the world have come to include the Eastern Gate as one of their main points of intercession during their visits to Jerusalem. Some meet there regularly, even though access remains blocked. They pray with their gaze fixed on those stones, nurturing the hope that one day the gates will open, marking a new chapter for the city and the world. On some occasions, workers carrying out maintenance in the area have reported sounds that seem to come from within the structure itself. Cracking sounds, muffled noises, and even the echo of small vibrations have been described, although there is no conclusive technical explanation. Experts consulted attribute these sounds to the natural movement of the ancient stones, which respond to climate change and pressure exerted over the centuries. Local media outlets, although they treat the matter with caution, occasionally publish stories about these events. In one of the most well-known reports, a group of tourists witnessed a small fissure opening up while visiting the site, which generated speculation on social media and reignited debates among those who follow signs related to the city of Jerusalem. These phenomena, even when analyzed from a scientific perspective, cannot erase the sense of mystery surrounding the Golden Gates. The fact is that the combination of observable physical changes, personal experiences, and the prophetic backdrop creates a unique atmosphere around that space. Every dust that falls, every sound that echoes, and every new crack that appears adds another layer of expectation to what was already considered one of the most emblematic points of faith and history in the region. The reality of the phenomena observed at the Golden Gates, combined with the weight of tradition and scripture, has fueled an intense debate among theologians, archaeologists, and scientists. Each group, with its own methodologies and beliefs, seeks to interpret the signs that appear before one of Jerusalem's most emblematic landmarks. In the theological field, scholars of biblical prophecy have been studying recent events with renewed attention. Many see the small movements and structural changes as a possible harbinger of the fulfillment of ancient promises. Among those who dedicate themselves to studying eschatological texts, there is a growing expectation that future events involving that gate may mark the beginning of a new period in the spiritual history of humanity. For these interpreters, the signs should not be seen in isolation, but as part of a set of events that, when analyzed together, point to a scenario of transformation. Several faith communities, spread across different continents, have included references to the Eastern Gate in their sermons. Sermons, Bible studies, and even entire conferences have been dedicated to discussing the meaning of the recent reports from Jerusalem. Prayer groups organize vigils and specific campaigns focusing on that site. This interest, far from being a passing fad, reflects the importance that the Golden Gates occupy in the collective imagination of millions of people. Meanwhile, archaeologists are taking a more technical and objective approach. Their focus is on understanding the physical structure, its construction history, and the geological factors that may be influencing recent changes. Excavations and soil analyses in the surrounding area have revealed that the area has a considerable level of natural instability. The combination of ancient sediments, climate variations, and the impact of historical earthquakes in the area contribute to the fragility of parts of the wall. In recent surveys, scholars from the Israel Antiquities Authority have identified small displacements in the stone layers. The use of modern technologies, such as laser scanning and three-dimensional mapping of the surface, has made it possible to detect microcracks that would not be visible to the naked eye. Such studies are essential to ensuring the preservation of the structure, but they also feed the curiosity of those who follow each new piece of information with almost religious interest. In the scientific field, civil engineers who monitor the stability of the walls of Jerusalem treat the observed changes as part of a natural aging process of historic buildings. According to technical reports, daily temperature variations, combined with the pressure exerted by the passage of time and the action of phenomena such as humidity and seismic movement, are sufficient to explain the recorded displacements. These assessments, however, do not diminish the fascination that the subject arouses in the general public. Geology researchers have also been involved in the analysis. Studies on the composition of the soil in the region indicate that tectonic activity, although low intensity most of the time, can generate small tremors that can cause micro-damage to older structures. Although there is no imminent forecast of collapse, authorities continue to closely monitor any signs of deterioration. While experts work with numbers, graphs, and computer models, many believers prefer to interpret the same events as signs sent from a spiritual dimension. This difference in perspectives, far from creating an absolute conflict, generates an environment of constant dialogue where faith and science walk hand in hand, each offering its own explanations. Social media and the media also play an important role in amplifying these stories. Videos taken by tourists, images of small clouds of dust rising from the cracks in the gate, and testimonies from pilgrims are widely circulated, reaching a global audience. This has contributed to the continued growth of interest in the Golden Gates, reaching people who, until recently, may never have heard of the site. The most notable aspect of all this movement is the way in which different segments of society relate to the issue. While some wait for a supernatural event that will change the course of history, others follow with a critical eye, seeking explanations in natural laws and geological cycles. Between one extreme and the other, there is a large majority that simply observes, without rushing to draw conclusions, but aware that something unique involves that closed gate. The balance between skepticism and expectation creates a scenario where human curiosity manifests itself in its most genuine form. The search for answers, whether through science, archaeology, or faith, keeps the Eastern Gate in the spotlight. Thus, the space continues to defy logic, awaken emotions, and gather attentive eyes from all over the world, which continue to focus on those silent stones that carry so much of their history. Along the way, what began as a simple stone wall has become an invitation to delve into deeper layers of history, faith, archaeology, and expectation. The Golden Gates, which have remained closed for so many centuries, continue to provoke questions that transcend time, cross generations, and cross cultural boundaries. The silence of the stones blocking that passage is not an empty silence. It subtly echoes each of the promises recorded throughout Scripture. It also holds the memories of political decisions made based on fear, strategy, and religious convictions from a distant era. With each new fissure, with each grain of dust that is dislodged, the city of Jerusalem is reminded that the weight of history is still very much felt. For those who see the world through the eyes of faith, the Eastern Gate symbolizes the expectation of the fulfillment of a future that has not yet come to pass. They see it as a prophetic landmark, a place where heaven and earth may meet in unexpected ways. Each report of new movement, no matter how small, serves to reinforce the belief that the time of promise is near. Scientists and heritage experts are cautious and responsible. There is a legitimate concern about the physical preservation of the structure, which results in constant monitoring, technical assessments, and conservation projects. But even among the most skeptical, it is difficult to ignore the symbolism that these stones carry. After all, the importance of a place is not always limited to what is visible or measurable. What is most striking about this whole scenario is the way in which different narratives intersect and intertwine. Science observes the movements of the soil. Archaeology studies each fragment of history stored in the layers of earth. Theology reads the signs between the lines of the sacred texts. Meanwhile, thousands of people in different parts of the world keep their eyes on Jerusalem, awaiting the unfolding of events. Regardless of the perspective adopted, it is undeniable that the Golden Gates exert a rare magnetism. They are, at the same time, witnesses to the past and beacons of a future that remains open. With each new generation, the same question arises: what will happen when, one day, these doors are opened? Perhaps the greatest impact of this gate is not in the physical act of its opening, but in what it represents for humanity. It symbolizes the constant tension between what has been and what is yet to come, between the tangible and the spiritual, between the historical and the prophetic. The city of Jerusalem, with all its complexity and beauty, continues to be the stage for this mystery that remains alive. While the walls resist the test of time, debates continue, prayers continue, and studies deepen. Thus, the Golden Gates remain there, imposing and silent, awaiting the moment when, somehow, history will once again write a new chapter about them. And perhaps, when that day comes, the meaning of everything that has been observed, studied, and expected will finally take on contours that we cannot yet fully understand. Until then, the gate remains closed, but never forgotten. If you enjoyed the content and want to support our work so that we can continue to bring you more in-depth research and analysis, please consider making a donation of any amount. This contribution directly helps in the growth of the channel and in the production of even richer materials. Thank you very much for your support.